Your favorite uncle's era on FS1's morning debate show is coming to an end. The New York Post is reporting that Shannon Sharpe will be leaving Skip Bayless and Undisputed after Sharpe agreed to a buyout with Fox Sports, which is the parent company to FS1. Looks like Shannon Sharpe will be finishing up here the NBA Finals with Skip Bayless, but right after the finals, at some point in June, Shannon will be leaving Undisputed, and we'll likely hear about what's next for the Pro Football Hall of Famer in the future. This is a story that your boy FERRO has a lot of opinions on, a lot of takes. When it comes to music, we just kind of give the news and get out of the way. When it comes to sports, television, being that I definitely worked in this industry for quite some time and that I continue to cover NBA, y'all know I am fascinated by this. This is stuff I want to talk to. Behind the scenes, this is the type of nerdy stuff I want to talk about. Shannon Sharpe's leaving Skip Bayless and Undisputed. So let me take you down a timeline real quick. And I tell this story frequently. I'll tell it again. Look, I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I said this when it happened back in 2015. When I worked at ESPN, that is a lifelong flex coming from where I come from. You're going to hear my stories from my time when I worked at ESPN over and over and over again. Sorry if it pisses you off. That's a lifelong flex for me, a kid that came from nothing, all right? So I tell this story frequently. I did breakfast with Stephen A. Smith one time, and I think that's a valuable piece to this story because when I did breakfast with Stephen A. one time, I had no business doing it. I just sat with him, and he gave me time of the day. And then it led to me, actually, I ended up, the head producer of First Take allowed me to follow Stephen A. So I got to be in on First Takes. I told him, I'm here as a production assistant, but my dream is to be on camera. Obviously, I had no idea that it would become this, talking to you guys every day. But I told one of the lead producers, hey, I want to be on camera one day. Let me get around greatness. And I got to be around Stephen A. Smith. So I did breakfast with Stephen A. one day, and he told me straight up and down, I can never do what you do. I don't even know what you do. Again, my job was just to produce highlights. Like, in the morning when you're watching Undisputed, First Take, whatever the case may be, you see highlights that run across the screen while they're debating, just so you're not looking at their faces for 20, 30 minutes at a time. That was my job, to make highlights for SportsCenter, to make highlights for First Take. I was doing his and hers with Jamel and Michael as well. That was my job, right? I bring that up to say Stephen A. told me I can never do your job. And he said, as a matter of fact, the only reason why I'm here is because Skip Bayless brought me back. And that's a valuable piece of this story. I'll explain to you why. I always felt like Skip and Stephen A. just meshed together. And I was dumbfounded when I heard the news that Skip was leaving First Take in ESPN. I think that was like 2016. I had already left by then. I went back to college. I got my degree. I had already left ESPN at that point. When Skip, I think it was 2016, 2017, right around there, he left. I was dumbfounded because on my last day at ESPN, Skip was one of the people that told me, yo, you need to get up out of here. I see people come here and they never, finish their goals. They never go achieve their dreams because they get lost in the sauce here as a production assistant, a producer. He was like, go chase your dreams. I didn't know at the time next year he was going to go to California to go be on Undisputed with Shannon Sharpe. When Skip left ESPN, the first thing I thought was, man, he's really going to leave Stephen A. They got magic in a bottle. Like, these two dudes just mesh. A lot of people don't remember when Stephen A. left ESPN right around the Quite Frankly era. Remember when Stephen A. had his little nightly television show, pretty much like what Scott Van Pelt's got now? When Stephen A. had that show, it didn't do well, and he was done with ESPN. It was Skip Bayless that brought Stephen A. back. And then obviously Stephen A. began reporting again. He started doing guest spots on First Take. And then obviously they made magic with First Take. It's historically probably the most important debate show ever, right? Between those two. Skip leaves. I'm thinking, what is he doing? I knew about Shannon Sharpe at the time. I had watched him a little bit on CBS when he was working there. I didn't think Shannon would be anywhere close to what Stephen A. and Skip accomplished. Give Skip Bayless credit. He leaves Stephen A. and go finds magic in a bottle again at FS1 with Undisputed, and he does it with Shannon Sharpe. Shannon Sharpe's personality just glows off the wall. He literally became everybody's uncle, right? He literally, and then it's a strong, buff dude that's great, phenomenal shape. He just went into everybody's household. And to be fair with and like honest about it, ESPN has original programming, right? They're always going to be number one in ratings. But the fact that Undisputed on FS1 was giving ESPN a run for their money in ratings, you know, in the same time slot, First Take versus Undisputed. Undisputed, I think, comes on 30 minutes earlier than First Take. That's unreal because there's no real original programming on FS1, like not outside of like NASCAR and soccer, which a lot of Americans ain't watching, right? They watching the NBA, they watching Monday Night Football. All that stuff was on ESPN. That just tells you how much Shannon Sharpe and Skip Bayless were killing it. Whether you like, love, or hate their opinions, you wanted to see what Skip was going to talk about on them Monday mornings when them Dallas Cowboys lost. You wanted to see what Shannon Sharpe was going to talk about when LeBron James and the Lakers won or lost, right? It just became a part of culture. All the memes, all that stuff. So the fact that we are here with Shannon Sharpe now bouncing on Skip is just shocking to me. I don't know where he's going. Shannon's a very smart dude. I've never met Shannon in my life. I'm assuming he's got his next play lined up. I'm fascinated to know what it is to be leaving that, you know, this summer with football season right around the corner. Clearly something has teed him off. Now, a lot of people are pointing to the DeMar Hamlin thing that happened. Obviously, we know Monday Night Football game towards the end of the season. Buffalo Bills playing the Cincinnati Bengals. DeMar Hamlin gets hit and obviously pretty much dies on the field, right? And Skip Bayless goes on Twitter and he's pretty much like, yo, when we gonna get back to playing football? That did not go over well. Shannon being a former athlete, obviously, very, very, very concerned about DeMar's health. And maybe Skip was concerned about his health. He just tweeted something out that didn't appear to be that concerned with his health. I think the next day, Shannon didn't come to work or something like that. There was a little bit of a clash there. They had some friction already going in some of the debate segments anyway for months and months. We talked about this on this platform before. That gets me to what a lot of people are talking about, which is a lot of people think Skip overtalks Shannon, but I'm a guy that watches debate television since I worked on multiple shows through a different lens. That was never the case to me. Shannon usually talks 75, 80% of the segments, and Skip usually only got about 15, 20, 25% of the segments. Shannon Sharpe usually talk first. I think Skip always like to talk second. It would be Shannon Sharpe for about 4 minutes. Skip would get about 2 minutes, then Shannon would cut him off. Now, you could argue that Skip be talking nonsense a lot of the time, and that's why Shannon would cut him off. The reality is it wasn't a fair split. Now, allegedly, one of the reasons why Shannon would cut Skip off publicly was because behind the scenes, Skip Bayless was really calling the shots about what they talked about. So if that is true, which I don't know, if that dichotomy did exist where Skip is the one calling the shots about programming behind the scenes and everything and how everything's going to go, you can see how Shannon Sharpe, when they get on air, is trying to like flex his muscles because he's got the bigger voice, the more demonstrative build. You can see how that could not be a good mix, right? If that was happening. You also got to keep in mind the producer that brought Skip and Shannon over to FS1. I'm telling y'all like inside baseball stuff right now. The producer that brought both of them over, he ended up getting fired, if I'm not mistaken, from Fox Sports. Something happened with him. He's no longer there. And that was the guy, I think, that convinced both of them to get together. He was the one that put the show together. I think Skip had say-so in Shannon, but this was the guy that brought Skip over, and he's no longer at FS1. It feels like it was never the same after he left. Now, I'm about to give y'all a little more inside baseball. I'm going to tell y'all some stuff now. Somebody who works in the television business told me a couple years ago, actually, that allegedly, right before the pandemic, Skip Bayless' contract was about to be up. Like right around 2020, right before the pandemic just changes the world, right? Skip's contract was going to be up in, I think, 2021. Somebody behind the scenes, I'm not going to obviously reveal who it is, they told me Skip was about to leave Undisputed and do his own thing. He was about to do a one-man show and it was going to be on a new network, a digital network that was going to form. It was going to be kind of like how he does his podcast on the side. It's going to be kind of like that, where it's just Skip talking to the people, going over segments by himself, right? Which might be where he's going to go anyway with this. We'll talk about Skip in a second in his future as Shannon's future. Somebody told me behind the scenes Skip was about to do his own thing with a new network. Pandemic hits. Allegedly, the network can no longer fund it. Obviously, there was also no sports for a while because of, we couldn't, until they started back with the bubbles. Obviously, football was at 30, 40% capacity. That show never manifests with Skip, and he goes and re-signs with Undisputed, FS1 in 2021 with Fox Sports. That allegedly happened. Now, obviously, Shannon would know about that. And if that were true, maybe that has a part in this. I don't know. But Shannon leaving Skip Bayless, this is a huge risk. I'm curious to see where this brother's going to land. He's an intelligent guy. I'm sure he's got his next move panned out. The Club Shay Shay podcast has been tremendous. Now, here's the thing. It's been tremendous. Number one, that's going to be leaving Fox Sports as well. There's a lot of money behind Shannon's podcast. We'll see how that podcast holds up without him being in front of your face every morning. That's a big piece of the puzzle. Wherever he lands, I don't think he's going to be on another show every morning, Monday through Friday. I don't think. I could be wrong. Maybe he does have something lined up. I don't know where Shannon's going to land. Will the podcast be as successful without him being on television in your face Monday morning after a Dallas Cowboys win, a Denver Broncos win, a loss? That's going to be different for Shannon. We'll see where he lands. I'm sure he's got something lucrative worked out. I think it's a huge risk for him to get away from Skip Bayless. Skip has just been great to Shannon Sharpe's brand. Now let's go on the other end. Skip has had a successful run with Shannon. What's next for him? He's still under contract with Fox Sports, I believe, through 2025. Does he try to get a buyout as well? Does he try to go back to ESPN? ESPN is a way looser place than it was when I was working there and when Skip was working there, right? You look at the dynamics of ESPN, Stephen A. and them, they in New York now. They're not in Bristol no more. When I was working there, we were in Bristol, Connecticut. For those who don't know anything about Bristol, Connecticut, it's cold, it snows a lot. I'm from the South. I'm from Memphis, so I was never used to nothing like that. It snows a lot. I didn't have a car, so for me it was hell. Now, obviously, Stephen A. had driver service for everywhere he went, but for me, it was awful. It wasn't no black clubs. I could barely find black barbershops. It was bad for me. I didn't like it. I loved the job. I didn't like that part of it. I don't know if Skip would go back to Connecticut, but now they got the building, the studio across from Crypto.com Arena in LA. I don't know if you could make a show there. Again, I don't know what Skip's going to do with the FS1, because I think him finding lightning in the bottle for a third time would just be very difficult. I don't know who Skip's going to pick up as his new wingman. Again, give him credit. He's done it before. He's shocked us before. I don't know if you can go find another Stephen A. or Shannon Sharpe just hanging around. I don't know. I just find that hard to believe. ESPN could definitely use him back because they've never been able to fill his void on ESPN. We just talked about this on my Hoops FERRO platform last week. I just told you I felt like Stephen A. has been kind of he's been great. Like, he's become the face of ESPN on air in a lot of ways, but he's been trying to find his way on what they paying him all this money. Like, where do you put him, right? Like, what you bring Skip back in the mix, it all makes sense again. They're friends in real life. I don't think Shannon and Skip were friends in real life. I don't think Stephen A. and Max Kellerman were friends in real life. I think this is an interesting thing, and I don't think ESPN is going to pick up Shannon Sharpe. I could be wrong, but they paid Stephen A. allegedly $12 million a year. They're not going to go bring in Shannon. I don't care who you like more. Too many of Shannon Sharpe's traits overlap with Stephen A. And unfortunately for Shannon, or I guess you could say fortunately, he's such a big brand now, you couldn't just bring him on as a an average football analyst anymore. He's too big of a brand. So he can't just go anywhere. His brand's too big. I could argue that even though he's a Hall of Fame football player, today I would argue more people, especially young fans, they know him from being synonymous with LeBron than they do him being a Hall of Fame tight end. I mean, I'm 29. I barely saw Shannon Sharpe play. When I was a kid, Shannon Sharpe was already a Baltimore Raven. So, like, I don't think he could just go back to being a football analyst. He's too synonymous with LeBron and basketball. Now, again, where does that lead, Shannon? I don't know. I think this stuff is fascinating. I do hate that FS1's Undisputed is coming, or I don't know if the show's coming to an end. The partnership between Skip and Shannon is coming into an end. We'll see what's next for both of these gentlemen. Like I said, I never met Shannon Sharpe a day in my life. I bet if you pull Shannon Sharpe to a room by himself and you talk to him, one of the things I noticed about Shannon Sharpe is he's really struggled over the last couple years with a lot of the criticism that he's got online. A lot of people go hard on him, and say, hey, you work with Skip. Skip's telling you what to do. You don't talk to Skip like that. I saw Kwame Brown going in on Shannon last week. Don't tell me Kwame Brown is the reason why Shannon decided to get out of town at FS1. Don't tell me that Kwame was talking crazy to Shannon. I always felt like Shannon Sharpe kind of struggled with the social media component of it. And anybody that's ever been around Skip Bayless, he doesn't really care. He does great with it. He genuinely doesn't look at what people say about him. So it's all for Shannon. It felt like that stuff started to get to him, what his peers were saying about him. For Skip, it's all television. It's all entertainment. And, like I said, to me, Skip was a good guy. Obviously, I didn't know him personally. I didn't have to work next to him day in, day out like Shannon, obviously. I don't know if, I don't know how Skip is like when you got to work with him that close like Shannon did. But clearly, like, something wasn't right. For Shannon to leave everything that he's accomplished alongside Skip and put it down and move on, clearly something was getting to him. I bet if you pull Shannon to a room, he would tell you that he struggled a lot with social media, with the criticism that he's got for working next to Skip, the way Skip talks about certain athletes every day. It feels like oftentimes, and I would say this, and I like Skip, oftentimes it feels like Skip just depreciates the value in being an athlete. Like, I'm very selective what I say about athletes because I can't do a tenth of what they do. You know what? Sometimes I'll go do segments after I work out. Like when I'm coming to talk to you guys, I'll do them after I work out, like an intense cardio workout. You want to know why I do that? Because I want to be tired before I talk to y'all. Before I be critical about an athlete, I want to be tired. And the reason why I do that is because we got to remember, these athletes have been playing for 45, 50, 60 minutes oftentimes, and we're criticizing them as if they're the freshest version of themselves. Sometimes it feels like Skip devalues how difficult it is to have to guard LeBron James, to have to run around with Steph Curry, right? Like, and sometimes it feels like he depreciates the difficulties. It could have been to be DeMar Hamlin on that field, lifeless, right? Like, there is something to that. And I think Stephen A. is the guy that he's a journalist. He comes from reporter world. He can deal with it. Shannon being a former athlete, I think it was a little more difficult for him to swallow, just to kind of be in that space when he was a former athlete, took those head-on collisions, knowing Skip ain't doing it. I think it always was a challenge for him to see people talk bad about him because he worked with Skip. And I don't think he's just built like Stephen A. in that regard. I don't think he's built like that. Stephen A. does it perfectly. He gets a lot of scrutiny. I think that was difficult for Shannon. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this. Shannon's days at FS1 coming to an end. He's agreed to a buyout. After the NBA Finals, that will be the last you see of him on Undisputed. Time, love, and support. Your boy will never take it for granted. I'm out.